Hi and welcome to this week's not so much a project. This is something new that I'm wanting to do starting this week, and it will probably continue for maybe 4 or 5 weeks. On a Wednesday I'm going to be talking about the equipment I use or my process of making blanks and all the stuff that I do really. I'm going to be going through everything. So the first one, what the plan is on a Wednesday it'll go up and it'll be me talking about it, and then at the weekend a second video will go out using or doing something with the stuff that I'm talking about. So this week it's resin. I thought we'd start with a biggie, resin, and at the weekend I'll be casting something. That'll be the video that goes on from it. I get a lot of questions about the resins, the moulds, the stabilising, the pressure chamber, vacuum. So I've decided that I'll do this complete series and I'm going to put it into a playlist of its own so that people will be able to refer back. And plus questions that go, if you've got questions about specific things, you'll be able to go to these videos, either see if they answered in there, or you can ask me again and I'll re-answer them. Or answer them if they're new stuff. So it's really going to be a way of trying to get as much information to you as possible about the stuff that I use. I don't use every resin out there, and I haven't even touched on all the resins, but I'm going to go over all the stuff that I use, reasons why I use it, reasons why I don't. It is completely unbiased. Because obviously, you know, I have specific ones that I use, but it's unbiased. I'm going to talk about the reasons why I don't use some of these other ones, so that you can maybe get some understanding where I'm coming from. And not everybody's going to have the same experience as me, and so please remember, it's all down to your own experience. I'm just giving you mine. So with that, this first video is all about the resins. Main resins that I currently use is the Amazing Clear Cast, and I've started using Alumilite Clear Slow. I really like the Clear Slow, but I'm going to talk about why I specifically do that. But I've got some other resins here. I've also got the Royal Palm resin, which I haven't had too much of a play with. I've got the thin and the original. This was some Resin 8 that I had. They actually sent me this out, and I got on quite well with this, so I thought I'd do that one as well. The other resins I've used Resin for Art, which is a really popular one that Nick uses. I've also used Glass Cast. I used that for quite a long time as well. They now have 3 different ones. I think it's, I don't know, is it 10, 30 and 50 Glass Cast, but I used just the original, and I did everything with the original. And I've also used for Resin Art, I've used the Mastercast 1-to-1. I haven't used some of the Resin Art ones because, well, we'll go into that when I'm talking about the resins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of the resins, what I find good with them and what I find bad with them, or where I use them really. And just to sort of give you an idea and maybe hopefully stop you going down some of the pitfalls that I have with the resins. I'm going to start with the first resin I ever used, which was the Resin for Art. Really liked that resin, but it was a bit expensive. I was just a new caster at that point when I used that. I think it was Nick's early videos that I seen him using it on. And it was okay. It was epoxy, so I think most epoxies are pretty standard. If it cured, the one thing I found with it, if you used it sort of within a week, it was nice and soft and you get beautiful ribbons off it. But if it was a casting that had been left like this for maybe weeks, I used to find it got chippy. So I didn't like that it got chippy, because it meant a lot of work and a lot of slow cutting, and I use carbide, and you know they're always sharp, so it wasn't anything to do with that. So that was that one. But then what happened is I came across Glass Cast, which then was currently the cheapest resin, because I went out looking for the cheapest resin I could use because I couldn't afford to buy it. So I used glass cast then. It was the original one. I think it was 10, glass cast 10. And I made like boxes like these, and I made my pen blanks. It's a very thin resin. It's very runny, so it casts quite well if you don't have pressure or vacuum. That was the massive bonus with that, because at the time I was still playing about a lot and I don't think I had the pressure pot at that point. So it worked well for that. I mean, you'll get tiny air bubbles in it, but it was nothing that you couldn't fix on a pen casting. So so it worked really well. And I did hybrid stuff and that as well at that time, but I didn't do stuff like pine cones, because if without pressure, pine cones, Banksia pods, that type of casting is quite difficult, because you need actually something that's going to put the pressure on the resin to push it into all the voids. So glass cast was the cheapest resin I used for my main stuff, but I always used to buy the Amazing Clear Cast. I couldn't get it really in the UK. I could only get it in the small bottles, and at the time the cheapest place for me to buy it was Amazon. So I used to buy that, and all the jewellery stuff I did in that, because I got a nice shine to it. It was easy to work with, and it's a long pot life on that one. It's roughly about 45 minutes. So I used vacuum, so I could pour my cast in and mix my colours in, and then I could put it in the vacuum chamber, degas it, and then the way I used to do it was I used to pour it in a mould, because otherwise it used to flow over the mould if I tried to degas it in its pen blank mould. So that was sort of how I went round that. The glass cast also has if I remember rightly, has a long pot life similar to this. But then it turned out that I could get it at Metal Clays, because it was all about price for me. It still is all about price for me. I like that resin. We'll come to that last. I want to talk about the others, but yeah. So then House of Resin started to do the giant containers, which is, I think it's 8 kilograms in this, in the big ones, and I could get it cheaper than glass cast by quite a bit if I bought it in this container. Now this lasts for 12 months, and the way I looked at it was, you know, at the time it would probably last me about 3 to 4 months. So it worked out perfect. I could get it cheaper. Yeah, the initial cost, but you know, it worked out in the end for me okay. So that was the main reason that I went over to using this full time, is purely because of the cost aspect. I love this resin. It works great for the jewellery, but glass cast also worked good with jewellery. There was no problems there, and obviously there was less degassing worry, so it has its advantages there. But with the glass cast, making these again, I found it was okay sort of if you turned them quite close to when you cast them, but if you left them longer, that also became very chippy, and it wasn't something that happened with the Amazing Clear Cast. I could turn it months later and it would still give me smooth ribbons with no chipping. So so it had an advantage for that as well, because it's quite time consuming if you're turning one of these and you've only got to take really light cuts, because it just keeps chipping, and it hurts. It hurts when it hits you. I've seen me having to wear gloves in the past because I had tiny little cuts all over my hands where that was breaking off and hitting the back of my hands. So yeah, I don't want that. So I was looking for something smoother, and this does it. It's perfect resin for that. Really nice and smooth. I use this for Resin Arts, obviously, pen blanks, box blanks. All my pen blanks are actually done with the epoxy, because they turn nice after. They with pressure they go really nice into the wood, so you don't get a problem with the resin breaking off from the top of the wood. So yeah, I used that for everything. The other resin that I used was the Master Cast, but that's only to be used for Resin Art. incredibly expensive. It's probably one of the, well, apart from eco epoxy and stuff like that, it's probably one of the most expensive resins out there to use. And I did some resin art in it, and I wasn't very impressed with the resin art. I found it takes longer to cure than the Amazing Clear Cast. It's still soft the next day, whereas Amazing Clear Cast isn't with the resin art. I found there was no difference in using them, no difference at all in using them. So what I could do with the Master Cast, I could do with that. And the most disappointing thing with the Master Cast is it went yellow very quickly. Within 6 months maybe, the white on it has now a tinge of yellow in it. I haven't had that issue with the Amazing Clear Cast, so it made sense for me just to still use it. There is on metal clays as well, there is other Resin Arts resins. I couldn't tell you what the name of them are now, because I'm not particularly interested in trying any others, because this does what I want it to do. So the most adaptable of all the resins that I've got is the Amazing Clear Cast, because it does everything that I do. So if it was the only resin I ever had, it would be fine, because I could complete everything with that. As I said, I started to be using the Alumilite Clear. This is the slow one, so you get up to 12 minutes. I've had umpteen problems in the past with this resin until now. I used to get a lot of moisture. It was my own fault, but the information wasn't really out there as to why I was getting the moisture. But I solved that problems by heating. If I make hybrid blanks like these ones, I just make sure that I heat the mould. I just put the mould and the wood in a little oven at 200 Fahrenheit for about 15-20 minutes. This was Zach Higgins that spoke about this, so this is not what I found out, it's what he's told me. So that seems to solve it. Plus I have on my compressor, I have a moisture catcher. Now when it comes to me showing the pressure chamber and stuff, I'll talk more about the moisture catcher, because your compressor holds condensation inside the big drum, and when you release air into your pot, that comes down through the tube and adds moisture to it, so you'll often get like a film on the top, whereas the moisture catcher stops that happening, because any moisture that's coming through will be caught in the filter of that before it goes to the pot. So this one's now great. I can make some pen blanks up. I can still do as many colours. I can do 5 colours in it, no problem, in a blank. You mix, what I do is mix 1/2 of the resin. It's by weight, this one's by volume. So this is by weight on the scale. So I'll measure my 300 grams out and then add the colour to it, and then once I've got that all mixed in, I then add the other part, the part B. And then from adding the part B, I sort of talk about around about 9 minutes. I set a little timer. I just have a little timer that I use, and by 9 minutes I go, well, about 8 minutes in, I go to the oven, take out the mould with the wood so that it's really toasty warm, and that gives me about another minute. The resin tends to, in that time, heat up to 95, which is supposed to stop the blending of colours with that, which gives you these blanks that, like have the clear white in. That's how you get the clear white, and it doesn't go pale blue mixed in. If you leave it till it gets to 95. Now I'm still playing around with that number. I think I've had it up to 98, and then poured it in, and it's worked very well like that. So yeah, and then I can get it into the pressure chamber, and in 2 hours time I've got my block ready. So it's brilliant if I want something quickly to get cast, so if I'm going out to the shed tomorrow, I want something cast today, I don't want to be fiddling about, I want it in and out the pot ready. This is brilliant for that. It is a lot more expensive, but it is really worth it. Actually, it really is worth it. I love the resin. You get such crystal clear. You see that you get really crystal clear blanks from it, and they turn beautifully. And they turn, I think that's that one. Yeah, because you can actually see the difference between an epoxy and that one, but that's that one, and it turns really clear and crisp. Whereas this epoxy, that's that. It's slightly more cloudy. I mean, it's clear, but it's cloudy. Cloudier than this one. So, so yeah, if you're looking for that, if you're looking to get a really clear casting, you're going to be wanting to use this rather than that. And the other advantage is I can pour this into sizes of roughly about this size. Anything beyond that, and you get cracks in it due to the too much resin and the heat that builds up. It actually cracks the resin as it's curing. I've experienced that quite a bit lately because I've been doing a lot more big castings, not stuff that you've particularly seen, but stuff in the background. This though, you can do bigger castings with this. That's what that's made for, really. So you can cast big pots and stuff like that with the Alumilite Clear Slow. And a lot of the big YouTubers in America, Heath Knuckles and all these big ones, that's what they use. So yeah, so that's the reason around using the two of these. So I tend to use this one all the time unless I want a big casting or I want something that I need in and out of the pot in a couple of hours. This takes roughly, they say 24 hours, but I can actually put this in the pot in the evening and get it out in the morning, no problem. 12 hours and I could get it out of the pot. So that's those two, that's the two main ones. The Resin 8, this is a slow cure epoxy. It was very good with jewellery, didn't need to do any degassing with it. But the only thing is it did truly take 24 to 48 hours to cure. Let me just double check on the front of that. Yeah, 24 to 48 hours to cure, and it really does take that long. You can't demold it even in 24 hours, really. That was the only thing with that. Fine if you're just doing your odd casting and you're leaving it for days and days, but if you're wanting something done quite quickly, that's maybe not the one to use. The palm resin ones, this is the original formula. Now this is slightly thicker in this one. Now if you go onto the Palm Resin website, he gives you a lot of instructions about how to use this, and I think it's Jason is his name, and he casts without bubbles, but he's got some different techniques to do it. Not been something I've tried because I haven't needed to. So that's the original, and that is much the same as this epoxy, really. I think it's the same cure time. Yeah, it says cure time 24 hours, which is what this says, but I managed to get that out of the pot no problem in 12 hours. I also have the thin. This is on a 2-to-1 volume basis, and also this is really good if you do not have vacuum or pressure. You could make pen blanks from that, no problem, and they would turn beautifully, and you could just make them at home. These resins are slightly more expensive than the epoxy resins, but they have a lot more advantages, and I think they're great for starting out. You can do jewellery with it. I don't know whether I've got any. It's so clear with no degassing. It's like glass. You can just look through it, and yeah, add lots and lots of colours with it as well. I suppose you could leave the temperature. It's an epoxy resin. So the temperature on epoxy resin that you should leave it to is roughly between 120 and 130 Fahrenheit before you mix your colours, to stop them blending. Much the same with this one, but then you might have an issue with slightly bigger bubbles, because the longer you leave that resin, the thicker it gets. So there's good and bad about it, but you can definitely be making pen blanks with that without anything. So I think really, I don't want to go on too much longer because this is nearly 20 minutes just talking about resin, and I really don't want to bore you. I just wanted to give you my opinion on all the resins that I've used that are out there. So resin for art is not for me. I wouldn't use that again. Glass cast, I certainly wouldn't use that again neither. continue to believe this is the best resin for every application on the market, and I believe that this one is the best for clear casting and also bigger castings, so with the right equipment. So I'll be doing a video at the weekend, and it'll be a casting video, and it'll be maybe using one or two of these different resins, and we'll see how they look after casting. So I hope you enjoyed this first part. Sorry it's not a project this week. If you have any questions, please do leave them below, and a project video coming out at the weekend. Thanks very much for watching.